And particularly the southwest, not too many showers, a largely dry day here, and that's a sign of things to come. A few showers in the north, but many places becoming dry next week, and certainly in the south, turning warmer.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilisation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us. GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
On Mark Dolan tonight, my Mark Meets guest is Gina Miller, the woman who sued the government to force Parliament to debate and sign off Brexit. She's got her fans and she's got her detractors, but she tells her amazing story at 10. In The Big Question, with singer R. Kelly jailed for 30 years. Is it wrong to listen to the music of convicted criminals? Plus tomorrow's papers with full panel reaction and another topical game show. And in my big opinion, I'll be discussing Halifax and their outrageous wokery. Also, folks, we'll be dealing with Meghan Markle in my take at 10. A very busy show. You won't want to miss a second. We don't do boring. First up, the particularly exciting Simon Pusey.
Hello, I'm Simon Pusey in the GB Newsroom. It's just gone 9 o'clock. Detectives say a serial sex attacker who drugged and assaulted straight men could have attacked many more victims who may be too embarrassed to come forward. 35-year-old Luis da Silva Neto was found guilty of spiking 2 men with drugs before raping one and sexually assaulting the other. He used the date rape drug GHB in separate incidents last November and December in Middle Barton in Oxfordshire. Da Silva Neto, who's from London, will be sentenced next Thursday. The Conservative whip has been suspended from Chris Pincher while the MP is being investigated. A formal complaint was made to Parliament's watchdog after he was accused of groping 2 men at a private members' club while drunk on Wednesday. He resigned last night, saying he'd embarrassed himself and other people after drinking too much. GB News understands British authorities have plans in place for the possible return of a convicted jihadist and alleged member of the so-called Islamic State group. Ain Davis, part of the execution squad known as the Beatles, could be deported within weeks as he nears the end of his prison sentence in Turkey. Davis from West London was jailed for terrorism offences in 2017. According to reports, Turkish officials say he's scheduled to be released on the 9th of July, but could be arrested and face a criminal investigation when he returns to the UK. The WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has appealed against a decision to extradite him to the US. He's wanted by American authorities over documents leaked in 2010 and 2011 linked to the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. The Home Secretary Priti Patel approved his extradition last month. 2 British men have been charged with mercenary activities in the separatist region of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. That's according to the Russian news agency TASS. It's after Russian missile strikes killed at least 21 people, including a 12-year-old boy in the port city of Odessa. Officials say a residential block was flattened while people were asleep. Earlier, authorities confirmed 41 people had been rescued from a site where 152 people lived. The Kremlin has denied targeting civilians. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Moscow is still focusing its firepower on the east of the country.
The situation in Donbass remains the harshest. The fire superiority of the occupiers is still felt very much. They simply took everything from their reserves to hit us in the Luhansk region, in the Donetsk region. I'm grateful to everyone who defends our positions in such conditions. It's true heroism.
The Royal College of Nursing is calling for its staff to be fully involved in government inquiries into the pandemic. The union claims nurses were left at risk during COVID without proper guidance, testing or protective equipment. It's as the Office for National Statistics shows UK COVID infections have gone up by more than 500,000, with 2.3 million cases recorded last month. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to the wonderful Mark Dolan.
Forgive me for a second. Hi, is that Halifax Bank? Yeah, I'm just calling to check my account balance, please. Yeah, sure, my account number is 80773043. Sort code, let me think, 204019. My pronouns? Go to hell. Good evening and welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. And what a busy 2 hours we've got for you. I'll be dealing with the woke madness of Halifax in just 2 minutes in my big opinion monologue. My Mark Meets guest is Gina Miller, the woman who sued the government to force Parliament to debate and sign off Brexit. She's got her fans and she's got her haters, but she tells her story at 10. The woman who tried to stop Brexit. Plus, she started a new political party. What are her hopes for power? In the big question, with singer R. Kelly jailed for 30 years for sex crimes. Is it wrong to listen to the music of convicted criminals? Plus, tomorrow's papers with full panel reaction and another topical game show. In the news agenda with my panel, is alcohol ever an excuse for bad behaviour? That in the light of the drunk Tory MP who groped 2 men. Are grandparents unappreciated? And also, with the cost of living crisis kicking in, and with Tesco at war with Heinz, are supermarket own brand items just as good? We'll be doing a live tasting in the studio. Reacting to those stories and many more are my amazing panel tonight of radio and TV broadcasting legend Neil Dr. Fox, star columnist and the queen of the catwalk and the red carpet, Lizzie Cundy, and journalist, broadcaster and former editor of Labelist, an old friend of mine, Peter Edwards. Now, I want to hear from you throughout the show. The best bit of my programme is when you get in touch. mark@gbnews.uk. I wish you could phone me, by the way. Wouldn't that be fun? That was like the good old days. Now, this show has a golden rule. Do you know what that rule is? We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So there you go, folks. A busy 2 hours, big guests, big debates, and always big opinions. Let's start with this one. There aren't many bank branches around these days, unfortunately, but when you do find one, what are you looking for? What are you looking for when you go into a bank? Well, maybe you want a loan or a mortgage. Maybe you need to do something about your overdraft or take out some cash if you're one of the few people in this country that still got any. What you don't expect is a political lecture. You don't expect to have someone wagging their finger at you and telling you you're a bigot. You don't go in there to be re-educated about how gender works or to have your problematic thinking recalibrated by a bank worker in a machine-washable polyester suit from Next. Well, sadly, that is just the sight that will greet you if you enter a branch of Halifax, where staff are now being encouraged, not forced, but encouraged, to show their pronouns by which they identify on their badges. Here's the tweet announcing this policy. And here's what they had to say. They had to say, hashtag pronouns matter, an image there of Gemma, she, her, and hers. Hashtag pronouns matter, do they? Why someone called Gemma needs to be flagging up that she's a woman is anyone's guess. I don't know too many blokes called Gemma, and I don't know too many women called Steve. Though given the madness that's now playing out across the Western world in relation to gender, I guess anything's possible. And let me tell you, it is madness out there. Just this week, it was revealed that an increasingly woke NHS that you and I pay a lot of money for has removed the word woman from information about, wait for it, the menopause. This is hot on the heels of an online NHS fact sheet about cervical cancer, again, not mentioning women. This follows breastfeeding women, of course, becoming chest-feeding people, and pregnant women becoming birthing humans. If you called my mother Diane a birthing human, she'd give you a slap across the face. If you don't think there's a concerted attempt to erase women and to eliminate the privileges that women have fought for decades for, then you are living on another planet. And lucky you, because life on this planet is becoming intolerable. In my view, this extreme trans ideology is pure misogyny. It's men bullying women all over again. But this time, the men are wearing a dress. This rubbish about inclusion is nothing more than lip service in lipstick and hypocrisy in heels. Wokeism is fascism dressed up as empathy. I don't buy a word of Halifax's story that this is just a voluntary measure. We're living in an era of politically correct groupthink, orthodox values and opinions to which you must adhere. And we are in an era in which free speech is being replaced by compelled speech. Because by encouraging people to wear these badges, they're effectively bullying them, twisting their arm and guilt-tripping them into signing up to gender ideology which challenges the basic biological fact that there are two sexes, which, of course, there are. Don't take my word for it. Here's the world-famous fertility expert, Lord Robert Winston, speaking on BBC Question Time.
I will say this categorically, that you cannot change your sex. Your sex actually is there in every single cell in the body. You have a chromosomal sex, you have genetic sex, you have hormonal sex, you have all sorts of different kinds of psychological, brain sex, they're all different. Well, unfortunately, you can't say this publicly. This is one of the big problems. Even saying this on this programme undoubtedly will result in my getting a huge amount of hate mail. It always does. Overall, I think it's a very sad thing that we can't discuss biological science without actually getting completely caught up emotionally with something which is really completely wrong.
Well, very sad indeed, and what a hero that man is. This policy from Halifax amounts to compelled speech. Which worker at this bank is going to be brave enough to not wear a badge? Good luck with that one. As we saw with other coercive, totalitarian, collective policies like masks during the pandemic, even when you didn't have to wear a mask, you were shamed into doing so. It'll be the same with these badges. You don't have to wear a badge with your pronouns, but if you don't, it will be duly noted. And a missionary from the Church of Woke, whose flock is growing, will come after you. Now, I am wildly pro-trans. I've had many friends who have been on that important and joyous journey. Transphobia is just as horrific and wrong as homophobia, sexism or racism. If you were born male, but as an adult you feel female, you are entitled to identify any which way you like. I'm a libertarian. Anything goes, baby. But extreme trans ideology, which many trans people themselves hate and reject, is at best bullying, coercive and scientifically wrong-headed, and at worst dystopian and dangerous. Oh, and it's misogynistic and homophobic too. Misogynistic because if rolled out, this gender-free universe that so many seem to want will see the disappearance of female-only spaces. It will impact the integrity of female-only sport and will potentially put women in danger, with people in possession of a man's body but identifying as female, incarcerated in women's prisons, sometimes impregnating their cellmate. Talk about the Immaculate Conception. And of course, these men who identify as females can also be placed in domestic abuse shelters and even rape crisis centres. And it's homophobic because it labels a lesbian a bigot if she's not willing to have sex with someone that's got a penis who calls himself a woman. And it labels a gay man a bigot if he's not attracted to someone with a vagina that happens to identify as male. You couldn't make it up. Now, I'm no expert on gay men, but I have it on good authority that they are not in the vagina business. And lesbians are not known to seek out the John Thomas. Sometimes the stories you hear are beyond comedy, like this urgent tweet. This is a real tweet from the Canadian police looking for a missing woman. That's right, a missing woman called Isabella de Grace. Here she is, poor sweetheart. Where could she be? Probably popped to Victoria's Secret, or maybe she's getting her nails done. Isabella de Grace, what a disgrace. Or how about this corker? I love this story. Ex-soldier Chloe Thompson, that's right, Chloe Thompson, exposed her penis and used a wheelie bin as a sex toy in public. Chloe, you're such a naughty girl. You got your willy out. How could you, sister? Women have become so unladylike these days. Women and their willies, eh? This is all so wrong, and I'm not alone thinking this. The world's most famous trans woman and a hero of mine, Caitlyn Jenner, wholeheartedly rejects extreme gender ideology. Caitlyn has said it's gone too far and has also said biological males participating in women's sport shouldn't happen. It's unfair and wrong. Watching biological women like Leah Thomas still boasting the full meat and 2 veg, breaking records and smashing young women in the pool, young women who have trained all their lives and made huge sacrifices. Disgraceful. What about this story? It's Ricky Trez, a 29-year-old biological male, again, fully male, identifying as female, winning first place against a 13-year-old girl in a skateboard competition. Born with a schlong makes this wrong. Which is why Halifax's participation in this fiction that you can change biological sex is so insidious. Of course, they're not trying to make the world better. They're trying to make money and virtue signal. They say they want to avoid misgendering people, hence the badges. How do you misgender someone called Gemma? Also, I must admit, though, that Isabella de Grace, she has got me confused. I must say, I did wonder where she could be. Perhaps she popped to Zara for a browse. Or maybe she's buying makeup at Boots, number 7. And they talk about inclusion at Halifax, except any customers who don't like the pronouns policy and who don't appreciate this explicitly political intervention from their bank have been flatly told they can cancel their account. Take a look at this response from Halifax. We strive for inclusion, equality, and quite simply in doing what's right. If you disagree with our values, you're welcome to close your account. From Andy M. Charming. Talk about inclusive. Poor old Andy M must have woken up with a sore head this morning. And by the way, what bank is in a position to take the moral high ground, given that they fine customers for going a few pence over their overdraft or are a day late for a monthly payment in the midst of a cost of living crisis? And how dare Halifax, in particular, behave with such arrogance and swagger, saying you can close your account if you want to, given that they themselves were bailed out to the tune of £30 billion in 2008 during the credit crunch, 30 billion quid's worth of your and my money. We should have closed their account. Whether it's Ben & Jerry's making pronouncements about Britain's border policy or Halifax handing out these badges, I believe the public will vote with their feet. Halifax can fax off. You know the catchphrase, go woke, go broke. Gender ideology is highly controversial and organisations should stay out of it rather than feeding the monster that threatens the identity, safety, rights and freedoms of women and which brands gay people transphobic for not being attracted to the opposite physical gender. Thousands of customers, many female, are likely to accept Halifax's kind invitation to close their accounts and take their hard-earned cash elsewhere. The Mail are already reporting a mass exodus, with one customer pulling out £500,000 worth of savings in protest. Now, I don't believe in cancel culture. I don't want Halifax to go bust. I don't want Andy M to lose his job. And I don't want there to be a pile-on. But just keep the politics out of your business model and stick to the day job. My message is clear. Bogus, bonkers, bankers, bloody bog off. It's time for an end to this utter pro-nonsense. What's your view, Mark, at gbnews.uk? I'd especially like to hear from you if you disagree. Reacting to all of those stories that I've outlined in our menu, and my big opinion monologue is my all-star panel. Radio and TV legend Neil Fox, Queen of the red carpet and the catwalk Lizzie Cundy, and brilliant broadcaster, journalist and former editor of Labour List Peter Edwards. Let me start with you, Neil Fox. I'm just telling Halifax to fax off.
You are indeed. And I think it's pretty clear you're making your feelings known. I mean,
Neil, do you think I've lost the gig hosting their Christmas party?
I think that's one gig you won't be called for. But, you know, look, this whole pronoun thing has got a little bit out of hand, let's be honest. Is it needed? Is it required? To a certain extent, if it makes some people happier, there's part of me that goes, it's no big deal, but I don't really want big businesses lecturing me on it at all. It does seem a little bit unnecessary. That's what I would say about all this.
Well, Neil Fox, I mean, that's what people said about masks during the pandemic. When there was no mask mandate, people said, well, I'll wear one if it comforts other members of the public. And then we had mask tyranny. And I think it'll be the same with these badges. If you're not wearing one, you'll stick out like a sore thumb. That's why I made the point that, in a sense, this is actually compelled speech rather than voluntary.
I think it'd be a brave person if you were one of the employees of Halifax, for example, not to do it. It's like making a point I don't want to. And as you said in your monologue, I'm sure it would be duly noted, sadly, by someone and would not be a plus point on your CV, would it, or on your work record?
Yeah.
So,
Neil, I actually I asked one of my team, I got you sexed before the show, and they said, don't know.
Definitely male and happy to identify as he, him. Thank you.
Well, there you go. How about you, Lizzie Cundy? You'll see a lot of this in the world of showbiz now.
That's right, Mark. I mean, look at the soap awards, it's changed. You know, at the music awards, there was Adele who actually said, you know, she wanted to be valued as a woman artist. And we haven't got that anymore. It's all changed. You can't be called an actress or, you know, you don't get the awards for women. I feel it's dehumanising women. Like Keir Starmer said, you know, couldn't even answer what is a woman. Well, I'll tell you, Keir, it is, you know, an adult female. And let me tell you, last time I looked, I was one. But it's woke gone mad. And as you said, Mark, in your amazing speech there, you know, they really need to take the politics out of their business. And it has, you know, it's woke gone mad for me.
You know, the point is, Peter Edwards, you've been an artful critic of the sort of the dark ambitions of big corporate interests. You know as well as I do that Halifax are just there to make money, and this gesture is very shallow. It's very much virtue signalling. It's about their brand, not about making the world a better place.
Well, I'm an artful critic of many things, I hope, and perhaps some of your monologues as well. I mean, I thought it was a stream of consciousness, really, and there were way too many contradictions. So just to take a couple of points, I think banking by its nature is political, whether you're talking about decisions made by huge corporations in the run-up to the 2008 banking crisis, or cultural things. You know, I remember 25 years ago, financial services was kind of at the forefront of lesbian and gay rights, and you could argue whether that was enlightened or they just wanted people who were effective and they didn't care about their private life and their identity. But firms like KPMG did quite a lot to reinforce gay rights and ensure gay people felt comfortable at work. So I think whether it's culturally or economically, I think banking is political. And while you did name-check, I think, Caitlyn Jenner, I think you could do a lot more to identify the positive contribution of trans people to society, like the trailblazing writer and journalist Jan Morris, who died fairly recently. In terms of Halifax, my other question perhaps for you, Mark, is someone I'd perhaps describe as a libertarian broadcaster. How can you be against a voluntary measure?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, they're entitled to have these badges, but I'm commentating on their motives and what it means for society, Peter Edwards. I mean, this is the point. You know, you've mentioned a heroic trans figure that's no longer with us. And, you know, I've had very, very close friends who just felt that they were in the wrong body. It's the same as being gay. It's not a life choice. It's who you are. But there's a very big difference between trans ideology and being super, super tolerant towards trans people. They are different things. And what trans ideology is somebody that identifies as a woman who's a man with full cock and balls, competing in a swimming pool against young girls. Deeply wrong.
And I don't know if you saw the article Sharon Davis did about Sports Day, one of her friends, where they were all competing all together. Not one girl won a race. And I really do feel like we're dehumanising what a woman is, you know, and why can't we be proud to be women and say it? Why do we have to have it like this? I just don't think... It has gone crazy for me.
I mean, I would say those it's a very small number, isn't it? But of these professional athletes who are exactly, as you pointed out in the monologue, you know, the swimmer who stood about 6 foot tall and twice as big in every way as the other female competitors, winning all these races, breaking these records. That is insane. I mean, it's clearly illogical and it makes no sense at all. And that needs to be sorted out and some common sense needs to be put onto that. There are many other incidences, though, where obviously if someone is in the wrong body, you want to do everything as a decent society to try and help them make that transition and make everyone feel included. But I think in those very small incidences, for example, of elite sport, there can be no balance like that. It just makes no sense, as Caitlyn Jenner and many other sports women have pointed out.
Peter, we agree on some things, disagree on others. That's the magic A of democracy, B of healthy friendships, and C of the values of this channel. What are your closing thoughts on this issue?
Well, I think let's talk about what we can do next as a society. So I think we should always talk about trans people in a fair and compassionate manner, and I'm not sure your monologue did that all the time. I think there's a legitimate question about people born male competing in female sports, because if you end up being 6'4", that's not something that's changed by gender reassignment surgery. And the other perhaps point I would like us to think about to finish on is how trans clinics deal with children. I'm really uncomfortable with life-changing decisions,
right,
like administration of drugs, being made for kids. If you're an adult, you can make your own decisions. But if you're having potentially irreversible medical treatment under the age of 18, I think that's something society and regulators and government have got to think about really, really carefully.
I think that's absolutely right. Final thought, Peter. Is a lesbian a bigot if she doesn't want a penis in her hand?
To be honest, I think putting a question like that, you know, I think you've asked a lot of legitimate questions, but I think putting it like that, it does kind of trivialise it. And I'm not sure that's really talking about trans people with sensitivity.
Lesbians have been called bigots by trans extremists for that very crime of not being attracted to a trans woman.
Well, to go back to what I was saying earlier, like, it is a really inflamed debate. Maybe if we could stop calling each other bigots, that would maybe just lower the temperature a bit.
Absolutely right. Couldn't agree with you more, and I totally agree also about the handling of trans children as well. Peter, brilliant to have you with us. We're travelling business class with our panel tonight. Peter Edwards, Lizzie Cundy and Neil Dr. Fox. So excited about tonight's show. Can't do it without you. Keep those emails coming. What do you think? Will you be taking your business elsewhere if you're a Halifax customer? Next up in the big question, R. Kelly, the singer, is in jail for some awful crimes, 30 years. So is it wrong to listen to the music of convicted criminals? And what about novelists and comedians who are in jail? Are you still allowed to enjoy their work? And in the news agenda with my panel, is alcohol ever an excuse for bad behaviour? We'll discuss that in the light of a Tory MP who got drunk this week and groped 2 men. Outrageous stuff. Don't forget, my Mark Meets guest is the woman who tried to stop Brexit, Gina Miller, live at 10. See you shortly.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
A big reaction to my big opinion monologue about Halifax, who are encouraging their staff to wear name badges with pronouns like he, him, or she, her. How about this from Sue Harris? I think gurning Mark's obsession with trans people is a case of me doth protest too much. I like that. Dirty, dirty Mark, you dirty boy, says Sue. So Sue there, wondering about what my motives are, or indeed what my proclivities might be. Sue, thank you for making me sound so glamorous. Mrs. Dolan will confirm I'm sadly not, although you're entitled to your view. Ian says, Mark, this nonsense could be stopped tomorrow by women simply refusing to compete against these people. Can't understand why they complain, but carry on competing. Or Ian, I totally hear you, but I guess it's because they've trained for these competitions for years and in some cases, decades. Linda, great monologue, Mark, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Sadly, this kind of nonsense doesn't end with the banks. It's now rearing its ugly head in schools in a much worse fashion. There you go. Check out the video by Lawrence Fox entitled Groomed. Yeah, we're going to talk to Lawrence about that documentary very shortly indeed. Brilliant emails. Thank you, Linda et al. They're coming flooding in. We'll get to more of them shortly. Don't forget Gina Miller, the woman who tried to stop Brexit, live in the studio at 10. And I'll give her a tough time, don't worry about that. But it's time now for the big question in which we tackle a major news story of the day. Tonight, the singer R. Kelly has been sentenced to 30 years in prison for using his celebrity status to sexually abuse children and women. The story raises a wider ethical question. Is it wrong to listen to the music of convicted criminals? And you can ask a similar question in relation to disgraced comedians and authors. Should we feel bad about chuckling along to Bill Cosby's stand-up routines or his sitcom, or tapping our toes to pop icon Michael Jackson? What about Gary Glitter, who is still massive in America? Well, to debate this, I'm delighted to welcome social media sensation, a podcaster, author and star rapper Zuby. Also, media and culture journalist Jannar Jefferson, rapper Jordan Hibbert, otherwise known as El Hibbo, and Neil Dr. Fox, of course, legendary radio DJ. Brilliant to have all of you with me. Can I start with you, Jannar Jefferson? Do you think we should feel bad now about listening to R. Kelly? Is it time to delete those songs from our playlist?
Jaina, by the way. But
can I apologise, Jaina? I'm so sorry about that.
Totally fine. For me, when it comes to R. Kelly's music, since we know that a lot of his discography is so graphic and sexual in nature, knowing that his personal life is so graphic and sexual in nature, and as well as violent, demoralizing, absolutely disgusting towards young women, young men, and full-blown adults, I personally don't think that we should be listening to his music anymore, because his personal life and his professional life are no longer interchangeable. R. Kelly and Robert Kelly are singing about the same thing. So if you are someone who wants to listen to Bump and Grind, I think that you need to also recognize that what you're listening to might be about a teenage girl.
Yes, although I wondered, Jaina, whether, there are any great artists that wouldn't be able to escape censure. I don't know how nice a person Shakespeare was, or Picasso, or Mozart. I mean, where do you draw the line? Are we going to stop watching the Cosbys, the Cosby Show, or stop listening to Michael Jackson? Where do you draw the line, Jaina?
I think that's a very good question. I think the gray area and that counterpoint that people who are regular fans of these artists, these comedians, these musicians would say is that the art that the person's created may not intertwine with their personal lives. Like, for instance, we know Bill Cosby as Dr. Huxtable. Even though Dr. Huxtable was a gynecologist, that's up to the person to determine and discern whether they actually want to interact with this content, interact with the music, interact with the art, knowing what the people have done. Yes, they might have done wrong, but if they're not talking about what they've done in their art, if what they've done in their music is not intertwining with their personal lives, then I think it's up to the person as an individual to use that discernment.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear what Gina's saying. Jordan Hibbert, as far as I'm concerned, you know, let's just imagine the Beatles. Paul McCartney could turn out to be a mad axe murderer. I'm not going to stop listening to Hey Jude.
Well, for me, I think that, you know, as a rapper, there's many rappers that sort of have criminal backgrounds. I'm not saying that I do. That's not something that I have at all. But it's like some of my favorite rappers do have criminal backgrounds, and I'm not going to stop listening to them because it is that. Say, for example, 50 Cent, I mean, he's been to jail. I'm not going to not listen to his music. But I do think that for me personally, with the R. Kelly case and with things surrounding, you know, it's not making out that one crime is necessarily any worse or any better than any others. But for me, R. Kelly and anything to do with harming children, anything like that, it's a no-no. I mean, R. Kelly's made some of the greatest music that the world's seen. We know this, we can all agree this. But for me personally, I just think, I can't condone what he's done. And I think that his music, I'm not saying it should be taken down off of streaming platforms or anything like that. I think it should be left to the public, to us as the people, to choose whether we want to continue to listen to his music or not. But for me personally, I can't see myself really engaging in listening to any more of R. Kelly songs. If I'm honest, that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah,
but
it's come off your plate.
I don't think that the streaming platform should take the music down, because you start doing that, then it's like, where does it stop? I mean, are they going to take all criminals' music down? So it is a sensitive one, but for me personally, as I say, anything to do with children, it's just like, that's a no-no. So R. Kelly, he's X'd out of the game for me personally.
Although, Zubi, aren't we all a bit hypocritical given the fact that whenever Michael Jackson is played in a nightclub or at a wedding, we hit the dance floor pretty quickly?
Well, I think this particular issue is interesting because R. Kelly has been shady for decades. In 1994, he married Aaliyah, an illegitimate marriage, when she was just 15 years old. About 20 years ago, there was that entire situation with him and another minor girl, which was caught on camera, and he went on trial, but he somehow managed to get away with it. I mean, I think for anyone who's really been paying attention in the music world, people have known that R. Kelly is shady and has been doing criminal stuff with underage people for a very long time. It's interesting that this conversation is happening again. I mean, I guess this time he's actually been sentenced and justice has actually been served. But I think if people were going to cancel R. Kelly, they would have done it 20 plus years ago. Now, I totally agree that it is a personal choice if people choose to continue to listen to his music or not. I mean, I know there are people who haven't been listening to his music for the past 20 years. They weren't waiting for this official sentencing, but that was already happening. This is a situation where so-called cancel culture is justified, right? Like, I'm not saying that there should be a formal move to pull his music or should be boycotted or anything like that. But if someone makes a personal choice that, you know what, I do not want to be listening to and supporting and ultimately financing through my streams or through my purchases someone who has been doing all this activity, then this is a perfectly reasonable and understandable one. However, I think that choice is very much just up to individuals. That's for them to draw their own line and to take their own position. And that's not just unique to this individual artist, but any type of artist, any content that's out there. I think it's up for each person to draw their line of what they're morally okay with.
Neil, I'll come to you in just a second. Jana, if I could come back to you about the wider issue of artists. What about an artist who has been alleged to have committed crimes but never proven guilty? Someone like Woody Allen, he has suffered, I think we can agree, huge career and reputational damage as a result of claims of child abuse, which have been investigated and not prosecuted. That can't be right, can it?
I don't think that can be right, especially since I feel like a lot of people, depending on a community, depending on your relationship with these artists, relationships with these musicians, what have you, I think a lot of people enjoy turning a blind eye to something that might be potentially damaging to someone's reputation, to someone's career. So if someone is acquitted or they are proven not guilty of doing something that someone has been discussing for years and years and years, I think in that particular case with Woody Allen, and also comparing it to R. Kelly, since now he's going to jail, it's very clear that he has done what he's done. But Woody Allen, even though we've known for years that there have been allegations, controversies surrounding him and his wrongdoing with young people, I think people are just doing the, oh, it's out of sight, out of mind, it didn't happen, and allowing him and continuing to insulate him from these crimes, from this wrongdoing, if it actually happened, and kind of being complicit in this behavior and allowing him to insulate himself from these consequences.
Neil Fox, for decades now, you have been one of the country's most influential music broadcasters, and you'll have played the tunes of some pretty bad people. Do you think our attitudes are changing towards, the artist in relation to their work and their private life?
Well, I think the other contributors have made some really interesting points here, of which I kind of agree with them all, to be fair. And I think if I look at, say, as a broadcaster, all the broadcasters have taken, all big music stations have taken R. Kelly off their playlists, because as a broadcaster, you don't know quite who's listening, but you are there to broadcast to a mass audience. And if some people don't like it, then they won't want to hear that. If they do want to hear it, there are lots of ways for them to listen to it. There are streaming platforms, or they might have bought the music, so you can go listen to it if you want to. But as a broadcaster, and all the major stations clearly have taken all of R. Kelly's records off. And to be fair, you were talking about Michael Jackson earlier, who had never been convicted. There's a massive distinction there. You have to be really honest. But when
people only call him a paedophile because he's dead and can't sue, right?
Well, I would just say all those years ago, when the case was going on, again, broadcasters around the world and radio stations didn't play Michael Jackson songs because it would be very hard to come off the back of it. And what would you say about it when you knew a big case was going on? But once it had kind of gone away, all these years on, we do play his music. I mean, incredible songs. And again, as someone said, R. Kelly has made some really brilliant records, but, definitely right now, no radio station is going to be playing it. And you mentioned, is it the same as authors? Well, of course, authors, you don't mass read, okay? It's a personal decision. I can read a book, and I can do that at home if I want to, I choose to. But I think when it comes to broadcasting, broadcasters have to be responsible, and right now, there'll be no R. Kelly on the playlist.
Yes, I mean, Zubi, in 100 years, listeners to music won't care about R. Kelly's private life. Good songs tend to stand the test of time. Somebody that's guilty of also appalling crimes is Gary Glitter, the British glam rock star, who still makes hundreds of thousands of pounds a year in royalties from people listening to his music all around the world. Why does an artist have to be a squeaky clean, nice person?
I don't think that an artist has to be a squeaky clean, nice person. I think as human beings, artists are human beings first, beyond anything. These are men and women, and people should be held responsible, accountable, and they are morally responsible for their actions, their words, and their behaviors. Now, when it comes to art, as I said, I think it's up to each individual where they want to draw their own line. I don't think there's a clear and obvious, hard, black and white line that's going to go for everybody. And it would be extremely difficult to do. There are so many people in the past, not just in the world of music, but there are so many people who we celebrate, who are considered heroes in the world, who oftentimes have done and created positive and wonderful things, but there's also a really dark side to them, or they had some great moral sin, which even at the time, or certainly with the benefit of hindsight, we can now look back and go, ooh, that's not good. So I think it's a very, very personal and individual thing. And I think I agree with the fact that if you've got a broadcasting platform, then you perhaps should not be promoting and mass broadcasting the artist, the music of someone who has done such a thing. However, I don't think there's a move for this, but I wouldn't be in favor of a move to pull down the music or to censor books or censor works of art from people who have done shady things. I would draw that line. I think there's an important distinction there.
I think you're right, and I think that history tends to forgive the worst crimes if the art is of a high enough quality. Really great to have you back on the call, Jordan. I'm not sure how much of a comedy fan you are, but this issue around comedians having to be nice people and not put a foot wrong is a hot issue. So Aziz Ansari, very talented stand-up comedian and sitcom actor, saw his career destroyed because he went on a date, wasn't very gentlemanly, didn't commit any crimes or anything. He was just a bit of an idiot. And it really damaged his career because he came off as a horrible person. There's also the comedian Louis C.K., who, he behaved inappropriately to some female friends and colleagues. But again, he didn't break any laws. And yet 2 careers completely destroyed. This can't be healthy, can it, Jordan? It's a real shame we're having a bit of trouble. Oh, Jordan, yeah, we got you back. Yeah, what do you think about that? Do you know what, Jordan? We're going to definitely get you back on the show because I really want to hear much more about what you've had to say. I'm really sorry that the internet has not facilitated this chat. Jana, what do you think about that? Comedians suffering reputational damage because they were quite rude on a date.
Oh, man. I think this is definitely a tricky one. Looking at Aziz's situation, I think a lot of it was a big misunderstanding. When it comes to Louis C.K., from what I understand, it was not a very big misunderstanding.
Right.
So I think that is another pretty gray area. And from what I understand, both of them are still doing pretty well in the United States on their own terms. They might have found a different audience. They might have different approaches now to the way they do their comedy. They're not really filling out arenas as they once were. But those who are interested and supportive of their art and their comedy are usually going to find their way back to them in some capacity.
I'm sure you're right. Jana, final thought on this. We can collectively condemn the horrific crimes that this evil man has perpetrated for far too long, as Zubi pointed out, an open secret in the industry. As far as I'm concerned, lock him up and throw away the key. However, Jana, can you hand on heart, absolutely, can you hand on heart say that you will never listen to the song I Believe I Can Fly, one of the greatest compositions of the last 50 years?
I already stopped listening to R. Kelly years ago. So I've already, that ship has sailed. The last time I heard that song was when I watched Space Jam maybe 10 years ago.
Fair enough. Listen, you're walking the walk, Jana. Great to have you on the show. I apologise for getting your beautiful name wrong. Brilliant to have you on the show. Do join us again soon. Zubi, final thought, because you are a rapping star, entrepreneur. You've got an incredible podcast as well. You're a regular on Dan Wootton Tonight. I'm a mega fan of yours. Do you ever watch your behaviour for fear of future recriminations?
That's not the reason why. I do my best to be a decent person and to live a moral and righteous life in the best way that I can, not because I'm scared of getting canceled or because I'm scared of future repercussions for my career or my finances or anything like that, but simply because I'm not a scumbag. I'm not a criminal, and I was raised well, and I do my best. None of us are perfect. But for me, just as a man, as a human being, beyond being a rapper, a podcaster, anything like that, I think that's the bare minimum of what I should be doing.
Well, all of you were wonderfully raised. It's been a delight to have all 4 of you on the show discussing this issue. Media and culture journalist live from the United States, Jana Jefferson. Rapper Jordan Hibbert, otherwise known as El Hibbo. Also, social media sensation, rapper, entrepreneur and podcast host Zubi, and Neil Dr. Fox, legendary radio music broadcaster. Of course, Neil sticking around to react to the big stories of the day. Lots more to get through on to Mark Dolan tonight, including in our news agenda next. The Tory MP gets drunk and gropes 2 men. Disgraceful. Can alcohol ever be an excuse for bad behaviour? We'll discuss that next Gina Miller, the woman who tried to stop Brexit, live in the studio at 10. I've got tough questions. Plus, in my take at 10, it's another mini monologue. We're overflowing tonight, folks. I'll be dealing with Meghan Markle, who once again is off the hook. See you shortly.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. The brilliant political commentator Peter Edwards, former editor of Labour List, broadcaster and also general politics guru is with us. We also have the queen of the red carpet, the showbiz queen, Lizzie Cundy, a very old friend of mine, and a brand new friend to the show and to GB News, legendary music presenter Neil Dr. Fox. So there you go. Lots more to get through. In our news agenda, very excited about this debate. There's a cost of living crisis, as you well know. Are supermarket own brand items just as good? Tesco are at war with Heinz, who are trying to raise prices. And well done, Tesco, for saying we will not pass these costs on to our customers. So we'll talk about whether own brand items are as good. What do you think? Mark at gbnews.uk. We're going to do a live testing on the show very shortly. Now, pressure continues to mount on Boris Johnson after yet another one of his party members was suspended for alleged sexual misconduct. Here we go again. His now former Deputy Chief Whip, the unfortunately named Chris Pincher, reportedly groped two men, and the 52-year-old says he'd had way too much to drink and embarrassed himself on the night out. It follows a long list of sexual misconduct claims against MPs, with female members calling for a zero-tolerance stance. Even though he's apologised, here's a question for you. Is alcohol ever an acceptable excuse for bad behaviour? Peter Edwards.
Well, I think it's two different things. I think there's alleged sexual assault, which is criminality, and then I think there's having a few too many things to drink, which we've all done at times. I've certainly drunk too much in life, perhaps when I was a bit younger. But
especially when you agreed to come on this show.
Always happy to come on and argue with you. But where these two issues, I think, are different, collide, is in the House of Commons, where I was fortunate enough to work for several years. And I was saying to a colleague yesterday, there's still a bit of a Freshers' Week mentality.
Yes.
Yet this is not 18-year-olds. This is people across the whole age spectrum. And I'm also uncomfortable with the idea that MPs who are very well paid and have a professional support network, they work hard, but the idea that they face a unique set of pressures, so their occasional eruptions or implosions are perhaps more understandable those.
I don't want to hear about the eruptions because it's a family show, but the issue we've got, and we saw this during Partygate, which was a disgrace, Peter Edwards, and it's a stain on the government, in my view, because Parliament, number 10, this is a working environment. You know, you're in the workplace. You don't have a God-given right to get drunk and behave like that.
Well, again, yeah, and alcohol comes up again and again in his stories. It comes up in Partygate, where it was Downing Street. It comes up with the Chris Pincher story, where he admits being blind drunk.
And I know he wasn't, at Parliament. He was at a sort of private members' club.
Yeah.
But, he's a public figure. He was among colleagues. It's unseemly for somebody in a privileged position.
It's more than unseemly. And I mean, my question for Boris Johnson would be, why did it take 24 hours to suspend Chris Pincher? And my broader point, and we mustn't forget the feelings of the alleged victims in this. I think two guys who may feel very uncomfortable. Thank goodness they're anonymous, but they're at the centre of media storm. But the other point is, what's happening with Boris Johnson's government around standards? I was looking back today. Neil Parish, porn, quit. Imran Ahmed Khan, sexual assault, out of Parliament. Charlie Elphick, sexual assault, out of Parliament. Chris Pincher, blind drunk, sex assault, allegations. At this stage, we don't know what his response is. The allegations are not proven, but it's very concerning. And what's the conclusion of all of this? We're not talking about government policies. What is the government doing? Cost of living crisis, and I'm afraid we're mired again in sleaze.
Fair point. But Lizzie Cundy, we have all, haven't we, as Peter said, been under the influence. And I remember on many occasions drunk friends, colleagues, maybe grabbing me, seizing me, because they're out of their minds on something alcoholic. You'd have to be to want to seize me. And I don't wish to diminish or underplay what might have been serious crimes here. But it could also be that this man got very drunk and just, lurched at a couple of people. Is alcohol something that we should sort of take into account?
Well, no, there's no excuse. I'm sorry, he's in a senior position. Pinch by name, pinch by nature, I should say.
Have you never done anything that you regretted under the influence? Oh, one Cinzano too many?
Of course. But look, he is Deputy Chief Whip, and he's also had previous form. He did, and I thought that was the job title, but maybe I got it wrong. Look, I'm telling you now, Boris knew of his past. It was under Theresa May.
Yeah. It was under Theresa May. The plot thickens.
Indeed. But look, Boris
this
still...
guy's got previous.
And he's an ally.
Your lawyers might be twigging it. While I'm a Labour person, I believe he was...
Acquitted.
Acquitted,
It wasn't a criminal case. He was cleared by the Conservative last time.
They are calling for his to be expelled. Because how is this fair for... Parish gets thrown over the boat and gone. How is this not the same standards, really? Why isn't Boris...
But perhaps there has to be... that's a good question. Perhaps it's about having a process that's fair, but also quick. Neil Parish admitted it. He hadn't committed a criminal offence. He'd just been very foolish in looking at pornography in the House of Commons. This is alleged criminality. So I think what we need is a quick process, privacy for the victims, but scrutiny of what happened.
But look, at the moment, at the Conservative Party, it is a shambles. It is full of sleaze, one thing after the other, honestly. And the reason why Boris won't let this guy go and expel him is because he doesn't want another by-election. They've already lost 2, and let me tell you, if he goes, they're not going to win it.
And of course, Boris doesn't sack people because he didn't get rid of Dominic Cummings after the ridiculous farce of Barnard Castle. He didn't get rid of Matt Hancock for the CCTV snog. Boris Johnson just doesn't fire people. Is this symptomatic of Boris's premiership, or is this a rogue individual who's behaving badly?
Well, it's obviously not one rogue individual, is it? Because we're seeing this time and time and time again over the last few years. I mean, if I can come back to your initial question, which was, is alcohol ever an excuse? The answer's obviously got to be no. It's an explanation why people act stupid sometimes, but it can never be an excuse. Wrong is wrong. And obviously, whether he's an MP or not...
It's something, I agree, but I have been grabbed and by drunk people, males and females, and I just have observed that they're drunk, and therefore I've made a dispensation for that. It didn't go further. It wasn't a sexual attack. Just horseplay that people get up to.
Isn't it also about power? So, sorry for cutting across Neil Fox.
No, sure. I was just going to say, I guess the reality is we don't know the circumstances. We're hearing bits of it.
Yeah.
But if people have made a complaint. OK, so, if we've been...
But he's already said, I've had too many drinks. He's in a senior position. Yeah. He is Deputy Chief Whip.
No,
look, you have a responsibility, but sadly, their leader, Boris, isn't responsible for anything. So who do they look up to?
On Mark's point, I think it's about power because, frankly, we've all been hugged and kissed by friends who are a bit drunk in a pub, and we've also maybe been hugged and kissed by strangers a bit drunk in a pub. But those are not people who have a say necessarily in how the country is run. When it's a government official allegedly grabbing a stranger, that's different matters. So it is about power as well.
I think power's a brilliant point. Well, look, what a fascinating conversation. What do you think? Is alcohol ever an acceptable excuse for bad behaviour? Mark at gbnews.uk. Next up, I'll be dealing with Meghan Markle in my take at 10. And live in the studio, the woman that tried to stop Brexit, Gina Miller. See you shortly.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It is 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan. Tonight, my Mark Meets guest is Gina Miller, the woman who sued the government to force Parliament to debate and sign off Brexit. She's got her fans and she's got her detractors, but she tells her incredible story in just a couple of minutes. And don't worry, I've got plenty of tough questions for her. In the news agenda with my panel, are grandparents underappreciated? And as Tesco quite rightly go to war with Heinz over the prices of some of their items, are supermarket own brand items just as good? Plus tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 with full panel reaction. And after this, my take at 10, I'll be dealing with Meghan Markle, who once again is off the hook. It's Meghan Markle 1, the Palace 0. Find out why after the headlines with True Royalty, Simon Pusey.
Thanks, Mark. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB Newsroom. Police say there may be many more victims of a serial sex attacker who drugged and assaulted straight men. Louise da Silva Neto from London was found guilty of spiking 2 men with drugs before raping one and sexually assaulting the other. The 35-year-old used the date rape drug GHB in separate incidents in Middle Barton in Oxfordshire last November and December. He's set to be sentenced next Thursday. MP Chris Pincher has had his Conservative whip suspended while he's being investigated. A formal complaint was made to Parliament's watchdog after he was accused of groping 2 men at a private members' club while drunk on Wednesday. He resigned as Tory Deputy Chief Whip last night, saying he'd embarrassed himself and other people after drinking too much. The Royal College of Nursing is calling for its staff to be fully involved in government inquiries into the pandemic. The union claims nurses were left at risk during COVID without proper guidance, testing or protective equipment. It says the Office for National Statistics shows UK COVID infections have gone up by more than 500,000, with 2.3 million cases recorded last month. 2 British men have been charged with mercenary activities in the separatist region of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. That's according to the Russian news agency TASS. It's after Russian missile strikes killed at least 21 people, including a 12-year-old boy in the port city of Odessa. Officials say a residential block was flattened while people were asleep. Earlier, authorities confirmed 41 people had been rescued from a site where 152 people lived. The Kremlin has denied targeting civilians. GB News understands British authorities have plans in place for the possible return of a convicted jihadist and alleged member of the so-called Islamic State group. Ain Davis, part of the execution squad known as the Beatles, could be deported from Turkey within weeks as he nears the end of his prison sentence out there. Davis, from West London, was jailed for terrorism offences in 2017. According to reports, Turkish officials say he's scheduled to be released on the 9th of July, but could be arrested and face a criminal investigation when he returns to the UK. The WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has appealed against a decision to extradite him to the US. He's wanted by American authorities over documents leaked in 2010 and 2011 linked to the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, approved his extradition last month. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to the wonderful Mark Dolan.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Big stories, big guests, big opinions and much more. In the news agenda with my panel, are grandparents underappreciated? And are supermarket own brand items just as good? Tesco have quite rightly gone to war with Heinz, who are trying to hike the cost of ketchup and baked beans. So we'll do a live testing of own brand goods later in the show. Plus another topical game show and tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 sharp. With full panel reaction, plus my Mark Meets guest, live in the studio is Gina Miller, the woman who sued the government to force Parliament to debate and sign off Brexit. She's got her fans and she's got her detractors, but she tells her incredible story in just a couple of minutes. Don't worry, I've got tough questions and a few stats that suggest Brexit's going rather well. But first, it's time for my take at 10. Now, there's a surprise. The Duchess of Woke, the woman who split up the royal band, Yoko Mono herself, Meghan Markle, has escaped scrutiny for allegedly bullying behaviour towards staff for those 10 minutes when she was a serving member of the royal family. The millionaire professional victim, Markle, has been accused of being such a horrible boss. It's alleged 2 members of staff in particular were reduced to tears. Now, it's important to stress that Meghan Markle denies these allegations. But of course, now we will never know. What we do know is that she gets through employees quicker than James Corden gets through a KFC bargain bucket. And this is a great injustice for the employees involved, who may have suffered considerable stress and worry or even career damage by speaking out. Do they get the closure, the verdict or the justice they deserve? No such luck. It's one rule for royals and Hollywood stars and another for us mere mortals. The decision to spike the findings of this investigation demonstrates that Meghan Markle is winning the war against the palace. They are terrified of any further allegations that she might claim against them. Now, I've got no idea whether Meghan Markle is a bully to her staff. I'll take her word for it that she is not. But it's clear to me that she has encouraged Prince Harry to ditch his family and the country and chuck the whole royal institution under the bus with that disgraceful and disloyal Oprah Winfrey non-interview. She seems to have also railroaded him into being a bit part actor in the soap opera that is her life. Who could forget the pathetic spectacle of Harry juggling outside the window of their Montecito mansion while she gave an interview? And this week, she's declared Harry is a feminist. It's clear he wouldn't have much choice not to be if he wasn't. And this couple certainly love to bully the press, heading straight to court whenever their delicate egos are in the least bit dented. I think the findings of the bullying investigation should be published. Otherwise, the finger of suspicion will hover over a woman who misspoke, let's be polite, about her wedding date. And I think that the royal palace should never cower in fear in the face of this jumped-up TV actress. She's had a leading role for too long now. Meghan Markle has gone from running rings around Harry to running rings around the palace. And you know as well as I do, the only thing you can do with a bully is to stand up to them and show them who's boss. But so far, it's Meghan Markle 1, royal family 0. Reacting to my take at 10 is my panellist this evening, broadcaster, queen of the catwalk and the red carpet, and former close friend of Meghan Markle, Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie, once again, old Meghan Markle, she lucks out and she's off the hook. She evades justice.
She does indeed, Mark. But sadly, look, there for bullying wherever you are, whether it's in the palace or in the pub. But Meghan seems to have won this one, and I'll tell you why. Because the palace, the royals, are scared of what she's going to do next and the repercussions of it. Look what's happening. Harry's writing his memoirs. They've got Netflix. They were so worried over the Jubilee, what they would do, that, apparently royals were very nervous what to say. And, next thing, would it be on the front pages of the paper or in Winfrey, another interview, which apparently is coming our way again. So I think they're scared, Mark. I think it is a disservice to those that wanted, this out. I don't think the palace should have buried it. And it's not fair for those that have been bullied either. I really don't think it's fair on them. And I think the royals have done the wrong thing this time.
Well, yes, and of course, as you know, Lizzie, we have no reason to believe that Meghan Markle is guilty of these bullying allegations. It's therefore odd if she's not guilty, she has denied them, that she wouldn't want this out in the open, the findings of this investigation.
That's right, Mark. But why have they buried this report? There's only one reason why, Mark, and that is because the palace are scared of Meghan's next move and what she's going to do. And look what's happened so far. They did that interview, apparently that one of the royals is an alleged racist. All what was said about, the poor Queen when she just lost her husband was awful. And I'm sorry, I wish they'd just go away, do yoga, eat avocados on the beach. But sadly, they won't go away. And the royals know this. And they're very, very scared of her. And in some remarks, yeah, she's won. She definitely has won.
You know Meghan Markle intimately well. She came to the UK, you put your arm over her shoulder, you introduced her to the world of sort of UK showbiz and media. You helped her in her career and in her social life, although she quickly dropped you when she met Harry. She dropped Piers Morgan as well.
Like a hot potato.
But do you think appeasement is the way forward for the palace? Do you think they're doing the right thing? I mean, they don't want to pick a fight with someone who obviously will strike back.
Well, they don't want to ruffle any feathers, but sadly, I don't think this is fair. It's not for the people that have allegedly been bullied, and it's not good. I mean, I think it's up to us. We're paying for this lot. Why isn't this report out? Why are they burying it?
In his brilliant Mail column, my friend and colleague Dan Wootton wrote that she dreams of becoming president. Yikes.
Yes, indeed. And I said this quite a long time ago. And she actually did do politics at school growing up when her father was looking after her, though they sadly no longer, we know what that relationship's happened, terrible. But I do believe, as Dan Wootton said, that she has in her eyes, starry eyes, to be the next Obamas. And I think that is what she wants and what Meghan usually wants, Meghan gets. And I do think that's her plan. I think she really does want that. But as I said a long time ago, there's a real difference from being a celebrity princess to a royal princess. She didn't cope with it, didn't want it. They've walked away from being royals. So next, I think it is the White House, and I think she wants to be in politics. I really do.
Well, Lizzie, thank you for that reaction. It's time now for Mark Meets. Let's speak to someone far more qualified for high office and someone that actually seeks it. Yes, indeed, Mark Meets is the moment in the show when I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport, business and beyond. Tonight, they don't come much bigger in the world of politics than Gina Miller. Although never a member of Parliament, Gina was integral in the years leading up to our departure from the European Union. To many, she's a hero seeking to give Parliament a say in a seismic constitutional decision. Others see her as somebody who tried to stop Brexit, something that she vehemently denies. A businesswoman and campaigner, Gina Miller has twice led legal challenges against the government and won. Her first victory came in September 2017 when the Supreme Court ruled in favour of giving MPs a say over triggering Article 50, the legal mechanism taking Britain out of the EU. Her second came on later when the Supreme Court ruled that Boris Johnson's decision to suspend Parliament was unlawful. Do you remember that, when he prorogued Parliament? Her success in the courts has come at a price. She has become a hate figure for some Brexit supporters and has had to employ around-the-clock security and threats to her life, which is absolutely shocking and reprehensible. She has fans, but she's got detractors too, but she's also got courage and zeal. And her enthusiasm for the right cause knows no bounds, which will come in useful because she has set up a brand new party, the True and Fair Party. And naturally, she is their leader. I'm delighted to say Gina Miller joins me now. Gina, great to have you in the studio.
Lovely to meet you, Mark.
It's great to have you on the show. You've successfully sued the government twice in the face of quite serious opposition. You've got some bottle, haven't you?
I don't know about that. I mean, I don't tend to think about things that way. I just think if there's something wrong, we've got to address it. And people think I popped up from nowhere 6 years ago. I've actually been a campaigner for nearly 30 years, so I didn't just pop up overnight. I've managed to make enemies around charities, the financial services sector, modern-day slavery, wherever I've seen things that I think are wrong. So, you know, I'm pretty good at making enemies.
Well, to paraphrase Winston Churchill, he said, if you haven't made any enemies in your life, you haven't done much.
Well, I think it's more about, standing up for what you believe in. And that tends to come with people who disagree with you. But then that's healthy if people disagree with you.
There are lots of people that watch this show, that watch this channel, who are enthusiastic Brexit supporters. But notwithstanding the politics of it, which we'll come to, you have shown amazing physical and mental forbearance over many years. First of all, where do you get the energy from?
I'm a survivor. I mean, I've started talking about things when it was very unpopular. So, you know, I started my journey 30-odd years ago with my eldest daughter who has special needs, and I was told that she was going to be taken away and put into a home. And I said, absolutely no way. And my first sort of win was getting statements available for everybody. Yeah. So that's what I did in the Special Educations Act in 1996. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and I was told at that time, you know, people who are well-educated women don't suffer domestic violence, you know, 16, 17 years ago.
Strong women.
Strong women. You know, there are lots of myths around domestic violence. It happens to stupid women or weak women or people who can't stand up. That's complete nonsense. It can happen anywhere, anytime. So again, you know, lots of people said, oh, you should stay quiet. You shouldn't talk about that because that's shining a light on things people don't want to know about. So I think because I've survived some very traumas in my life, you know, with my eldest daughter, because of that marriage, I ended up living in a car for 3 weeks with nothing. You know, I've survived. And so I have strength that comes from failure, actually, not from success.
So it means that you're not afraid of the consequences of things because you've been at some very low points in your life.
No, I mean, if the person you love then tries to kill you, there's not a lot else other people can do to you.
Was it that bad?
Yeah.
Quite shocking. You came to the UK at the age of 10. Remarkable story. You attended a private school, and then at a certain point, your parents were not allowed. Well, tell me about your family background for a start. So where were you born? I
was born in what was British Guiana. Now, Guyana was one of the last countries to get independence from the Commonwealth. And ironically, I came to the UK because my father had set up a political party against a dictator. And the very charismatic leader was killed in a car bomb. My elder brother and I were then, my parents found out we were on the list of people that would be sort of taken out. And so they sent us over here to be safe, found a tiny little school in Eastbourne, about as far away from South America, 3,500 miles that you could find. But then 2 years into me being here, they imposed currency restrictions, so my parents couldn't send any money to us. So I took it on myself to walk down the seafront in Eastbourne and get myself a job. So at 14, I was chambermaiding at 5 to 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, then going to school.
And so that added to your sense of resourcefulness and independence.
I think I've always been an annoying little girl who just got up and did things.
Well, let's talk about the annoying aspect of it, because there will be many people watching this who will be thinking, there's the person who tried to stop Brexit, a democratic mandate to take Britain out of the European Union, the biggest plebiscite in British history. At that point, when the votes come in, because I voted Remain, but when the result came in, it's like, OK, we're out.
And I'm on record the day after saying
Yeah.
we're all Brexiteers now.
Okay.
I'm actually on record saying that because I do believe in democracy and I do believe in that.
You didn't act like it, though, did you? You didn't act like
Absolutely,
a Brexiteer.
I did. Because if we had left without abiding by the law, we would... I mean, you know, we're now, look at where we are now, talking about government breaking international law. If they had just triggered Article 50, they would have been breaking international law. It was about parliamentary sovereignty, the very thing that people were talking about. And so Parliament had to have a say. And in the second case, it was exactly that, because Boris was putting himself above the law and trying to shut down Parliament. We don't have a direct democracy. We have a representative democracy. So things have to go in front of Parliament. And that was what I was fighting for. Because for me, the consequence of not doing that would have been worse than actually going through the pain and the abuse that I got.
Well, and by the way, the pain and the abuse is reprehensible, completely upsetting. And I'm really shocked by reading in further detail about what you've been through. And I think you're a remarkable human being. But I think that politically it was the wrong thing to do to sue the government in this way, because if those, and you're arguably not one of them, but if those in Parliament who did want to thwart Brexit had their way, we would have faced not a constitutional or legal crisis, but a democratic one.
So there was nothing in the case. If anybody wants to go and read the case that I submitted and the judgment, there was nothing that we could do to stop Brexit. So, and actually, the timetable, we were very, very careful to make sure that the timetable fitted into when Mrs May wanted to go to Parliament.
But it helped the opposition and opposition Remain parties to attempt to thwart Brexit. So you might not have set out to do that.
No, it was a vote. So it was a vote, and it was a vote that went through. That's all that it brought, was to say the Parliament couldn't be out of the process. That was simply what the case was doing. It was saying a Prime Minister on their own couldn't use prerogative powers to change our lives. And actually, looking where we are now, I would say it was probably a good thing that I confirmed that the Prime Minister just couldn't decide what was going to happen to us on a daily basis.
And here's another question for you. Did this, and I understand you sort of have a legal and constitutional point of view with regard to that action against the government, but we got a harder Brexit as a result, didn't we? Because Theresa May's withdrawal agreement was effectively involved being in a customs union. It would have been a softer Brexit. In the end, there is absolute stalemate in Parliament because Parliament just couldn't sign off this withdrawal agreement. We had an election. Boris gets a landslide because voters in the Red Wall think, look, we want to get Brexit done. And we got a far harder Brexit as a result.
That's not up to me. That's up to Parliament. All I did was make sure Parliament had their say.
As somebody that isn't overly keen on the principle of Brexit, you must regret that history has played out to give Britain a harder Brexit.
Absolutely not, because where we are now, if I hadn't done what I've done, we would be in a worse place where we are now. We have to obey international law. We have to be part of a community globally where people can look at us and say, Britain is a country that respects the rule of law, does not go behind people's back, does not shut down courts, does not behave like a dictatorship. And that's actually what I preserved. And that's more important, actually, in the long term than what happens at the moment.
But if your legal action against the government had been successfully leveraged by Remainers, which they tried to do to stop Brexit and have a second referendum, if that referendum was to stay, I fear for civil order in this country.
Well, so would I.
Far worse than breaking a few international laws.
Well, no, it isn't, because actually we live in a whole world.
A democratic crisis in this country could manifest itself in civil disobedience,
okay, I don't know
violence. I mean, I don't even want to go there, don't you think?
No, absolutely not at all. Because the thing is, think about I don't know which political party you vote for.
Do you know I voted for all of them in my life?
Okay,
I'm a tart.
So am I.
I might go free and fair. We're going to talk about your policy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been pretty. I've voted for lots of different parties too. But the thing is, you cannot have people in power who do not abide by the law. That is a fundamental principle of how we operate as a country. It doesn't matter any more than that. That is the basic bottom truth, is that no Prime Minister can put themselves above the law. And that is what I will stand by for every day and all day and fight for. Our Prime Ministers cannot do that.
You know what? The little angel on my right-hand shoulder is agreeing with you about international law, and the devil on my left shoulder is saying, well, by having this probity when it came to our triggering of Article 50, doing it through Parliament, we risked a democratic crisis. What about the issue of the Northern Ireland Protocol? This is a deeply immoral treaty. that splits our country down the middle. I can't think of an example in history where an organisation outside of a specific territory has dictated the borders and boundaries of a country. In this case,
so
Brussels.
why did Boris design it, sign it, and actually put it into law?
Well, partly because he inherited Theresa May's botched withdrawal agreement.
No, he could have changed it at any time. No, he designed...
He got rid of the backstop, which was a miracle in itself.
Look, he signed the deal, he designed it and signed it, and actually in Article 16, there's a whole process of how you renegotiate. The NIP, as it's called it, the NIP Bill, the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, is a complete and utter waste of time and our public money at the moment when we're going through, especially when we're going through a cost of living crisis. There are mechanisms within Article 16, which is a safeguarding clause to renegotiate, and we can be at the table anytime. The EU is behaving as badly as the UK. There is no need for this, and I think it's disgraceful that it's being used as political football, because both of them are playing games, and I wish they'd grow up and get round the table and realise that you don't need this to trigger Article 16. You just need to be grown-ups around the table.
Well, here's hoping, and I certainly would hope for a negotiated solution, because the issue is that with the EU overzealously policing that border, disproportionately in relation to the kind of trade that moves around the EU.
They're not that far apart.
But the issue is that they risk restarting the troubles. We know union groups in Northern Ireland are extremely angry. That country is divided.
Actually, if you go to Northern Ireland, they're not. Actually,
unionist groups are.
No. If you go over to Northern Ireland, first of all, they're not doing too badly because of it, and they're benefiting for their prosperity.
In the single market.
They're effectively in the single market. The Alliance supporters, the new generation that are coming up, are actually not as aggravated as the past generations are. The peace is not as fragile as people think. But one of the things I'll say is when I say about a grown-up conversation, basically what they're arguing about, the EU wants a fast-track lane and the UK wants a red and a green lane. That's literally what they're arguing about. So that's what I mean about getting around the table and having a grown-up conversation. It's resolvable.
Right, and here's the thing, isn't it the poison pill for the EU to swallow is that a member nation, which was the UK, left the bloc, except that it has a geographical border with an ongoing member state, which is the Republic of Ireland. And the sticking point is the EU's desire to protect the integrity of the single market.
Which, why wouldn't they?
Right,
it's their union.
Totally agree. But we live in the real world. You're a realist.
Yeah,
You've been through a lot in your life, and you will agree that you can't argue with geography.
No, you can't.
Tough luck.
You can't.
The EU will have to accept, in the end, they cannot protect the integrity of the single market to the extent that they could on the continent. It's just not going to be possible.
They just need to go
back. They've got to let it go. Let it go, baby.
Well, they've got to go to where they were in February, which was nearly agreeing on where the lanes were going to be. Just get back to that. But the problem is that the people who are negotiating, who are nearly there, need political direction. And it's the political direction that they're not getting. And so all the different countries, different players here, the politicians are using it for their own domestic gain. And that's what's got to change, because we do live in the real world. The geography is not going to change. We are in a cost of living crisis. Things are going to get much worse. They've got to resolve this.
Well, definitely. We will talk about your policy platform in just a moment. Final bit on the EU. And I take your point that you were not out there to thwart Brexit. You just took this legal position, which I respect and understand. What about Brexit itself? Since we voted to leave in 2016, the accumulated rate of GDP in the UK over 6 years has been 6.8%. That includes the pandemic. France, 6.2%, Germany, 5.5%, Italy, 2.1%. Italy now has a national debt which is equivalent to 150% of its GDP. Ours is around 100%. Brexit's going quite well, isn't it?
Well, we don't know yet. We've had a pandemic. What we do know is, to counter your figures, is that OBIR have said that actually in last quarter of 2021, which they could measure as Brexit because it was difficult with COVID to separate the two, that we're down 31 billion hole in GDP. If you look at foreign investment, that's already down, because it's not just trade, it's about attracting foreign investment.
Well,
that's down 17%.
We didn't have a brain drain in the city, did we?
No, that was exaggerated. We were never going to have this huge
draw.
brain.
Well, lots of project.
Look, I work in city. It's my world. You know, I
and it's
work in financial world.
And it's thriving.
We don't know yet. There's been a downturn, and we don't really know
Well, we voted
exactly.
to leave in 2016. We were told when that vote would come in, if we voted to leave,
Look, I disagreed with all
there'd be a
that.
run on the pound.
Oh, I disagreed with all that scaremongering.
What about
nonsense.
the amazing vaccine rollout that we did independently of the EU? The EU threatening to erect a hard border.
No.
to
The
Northern
vaccine
Ireland.
programme was a plus. You can't say everything is a negative and a plus. What we do know is that every
Ukraine?
sector...
The EU's got its knickers in a twist about Ukraine.
Hang on, you can't...
Germany is bankrolling Vladimir Putin's
every
war
sector
machine.
in the UK is
the
suffering...
EU are having a nightmare.
Excuse me, every sector in the UK is suffering with staff shortages. We have paperwork that's exasperating everything for all of us.
Paperwork's back.
It's absolutely terrible.
Small businesses
we have
are suffering.
we have to have free movement in some sectors, or else those sectors will disappear. We haven't got businesses that are going to survive in the SME sector. We actually look at the reports after report. There is a downturn.
Companies are suffering. Companies are suffering.
We have got to get... Basically, there are three things. Brexit has happened. We need to reduce the downside, and we need to have grown-up conversations. That's what needs to happen.
And a grown-up conversation will happen on your watch because you're formidable,
I'm not sure
scarily clever. Lots of my viewers disagree with your actions, but one has to just acknowledge, as I say, your principle and your determination, and also what you've been through personally. I think it is really tough, and it's quite outrageous that you've had to even have security, and that is disgraceful. Let's talk about the future, the sunny uplands, which is
Yes.
all this energy. I suspect you've probably moved on a bit from Brexit now, and so now we've got your new political party, which, remind me the name of it?
True and Fair.
True and Fair, which I know is a kind of existing brand based upon your
My
charitable
campaigns,
work
yeah.
and your brilliant campaigns. So will you be fielding candidates in a future general election?
We will. Can I just say, first of all, I always said I'd never go into politics. Yes. So I'm a very reluctant
Famous
politician.
last words.
I know, famous last words, but I'm looking at where we are. My fundamental problem is I don't think we have a system that's fit for purpose for the things we have coming down the line. Politicians are not looking at things that we know, for example, that 42% of jobs in the future are going to be affected by automation. If we have so few people in work, who's going to pay taxes into our economy? How do we get growth? How do we deal with climate change? We're talking about boats across the channel. What about mass movement of people because of climate change? We have massive issues coming down the track. And my view is, unless we fix the machinery of government, we get better people who concentrate and make rules, look where we are now, that actually have checks and balances. We don't get better policy, and we don't get better politics and better outcomes for people. So that's what I'm trying to set our stall out, and people can accept it or not.
And where are you in the spectrum politically as a party? Are you sort of
I think completely outdated.
Blairite, centre
No,
ground?
I mean, that's all yesterday.
Are you a wet Tory?
None of those things.
Are you a Corbynite?
I think that's
I don't know what Starmer is.
No. I think
Are
that's
you a
no.
Starmer?
I'm
you got
not.
A cervix?
I don't believe that any of that is applicable today. I think
you don't think left and right works
No,
anymore?
It's about right and wrong, and
I
that's
agree.
it. It's right and wrong. That's yesterday's politics, and we've got to be about long-term sustainable solutions that are about fairness in people's lives and telling people the truth, because things are going to get tough. Things are going to get tough.
And it's not communism, is it, or anything like that?
No, I don't. No, I don't think so. I'm maybe a benevolent dictator.
The thing is, you've got a social conscience, but you are a capitalist as well, aren't you?
I'm a responsible capitalist. I think what's happening, today, if you look at, what BT did today, it's absolutely despicable for them to be saying that their employees can't get a pay rise when their chief exec got a 32% pay rise last year and a 3.5%
Wait a minute.
pay.
Does this mean that under Prime Minister Gina Miller we're going to have spiralling inflation?
No, we won't.
You're giving everyone a pay rise. How are we going to pay for that?
No. It's about businesses being more responsible in the way they run their businesses and treat their customers. And that means not just pursuit of profit.
Brilliant. Now, how can we find out more about the True and Fair Party?
Well, True and Fair Party, the website's there, trueandfairparty.uk. We are going to field candidates. You'll hear some news about our candidate selection programme, which opens in a couple of weeks. I've spent the last 2 weeks going around the country, and I have to say, Mark, one of the things I find really, really upsetting is I didn't actually know, I will confess this, I didn't know how broken our country was. The poverty I've seen, the living conditions I've seen, parents not eating. We've got to do something to make our country better.
And on that, we can agree. A privilege to have you on the show. Really fascinating conversation. I reiterate that lots of people will be raging about some of your actions in the past, but I just don't think one can question your integrity or indeed your, as I said earlier, your brass neck and your bottle. Brilliant stuff. Do come and see us again soon. Gina Miller, fascinating conversation. Your reaction to that interview. Please give me the good, the bad and the indifference. Mark at gbnews.uk. Next up, the papers, hot off the press with full panel reaction. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Big reaction to my conversation in Mark Meets with Gina Miller. I'll bring email reaction shortly, but it's just gone 10:30. It's time for tomorrow's papers, hot off the press. Sebastian, where shall we start? Let's go to the I newspaper, and here's what they are leading with. Johnson hit by backlash for protecting groping MP. Prime Minister angers Tory colleagues by trying to protect Chris Pincher following allegations that the MP drunkenly groped two men at a private members' club. The Star next. Bird heading home to Gateshead found 4,000 miles away in Alabama. Nab him, jab him, tab him, grab him. Stop that pigeon now. Drat, drat and double drat. Bird brain Bob the pigeon is lost 4,000 miles from home. Called for dastardly and muttily. Blimey, sounds like my Uber driver. Let's go to the Daily Telegraph next. Holiday chaos as airlines axe more flights. British Airways services from Heathrow expected to bear the brunt of new cancellations. Holiday? What holiday? Winning proves elementary for Watson. Heather Watson reached the fourth round of Wimbledon with victory over Slovenian Kaja Juvan yesterday. Great news. This is her first final 16 of a Grand Slam in 43 attempts. There you go. Always worth coming back and trying one more time. Number 10 warned groping MP may be a liability. And Jacob Rees-Mogg bans woke training courses. The Times next. Sex pest Tory faces fresh claim by activist. Johnson suspends MP in groping scandal. And turn up the volume. The Grammy Award winner Adele took to the stage in Hyde Park last night for one of two live concerts, her first in the UK since 2017. And let's be honest, looking and sounding fabulous. The Daily Express. PM's bold plan. Buy dream home and pass on mortgage. Revolutionary plans allowing 50-year family mortgages to be shared by generations have received Boris Johnson's backing. Imagine that, a 50-year family mortgage. What a novel idea. Could that save Boris's skin, I wonder? The Guardian next. Questions for Johnson as Tory whip suspended. Watchdog investigating allegations that MP groped two men in a private members' club. And at last, Heather Watson breaks through to the second week of Wimbledon. Let's hope she goes all the way. Watson pushes through to the fourth round, say The Independent. Again, brilliant photograph of Heather Watson celebrating a steely win on court one yesterday. And PM promoted groper despite conduct warning. And last but not least, the Daily Mail. Groping Tory was too drunk to speak. Downing Street was last night braced with fresh allegations about the behaviour of Boris Johnson's former Deputy Chief Whip. In a dramatic change of heart, the PM yesterday suspended the whip from Chris Pincher as new details emerged of his drunken night of shame at London's Carlton Club on Wednesday. Yeah, I didn't think it would be a Wetherspoons somehow. And Jerry Hall, I still love Rupert Murdoch and I'm devastated. And there you go. Those are your front pages. Let's get full reaction from my brilliant panel, Neil Fox, and also the wonderful Lizzie Cundy and the marvellous Peter Edwards. Let's start... where shall we start? Let's go to The Guardian, shall we? Can we go for The Guardian first? Questions for Johnson as Tory whip suspended, a story covered also in The Times. Lizzie Cundy, Boris in more trouble, really.
He's in deep water. It's one thing after another, and I'm afraid, I'm sorry, Boris has got to step down himself. Step down now. It's getting too
Lizzie,
much. It's
you've been a supporter of Boris. Where's your loyalty?
Where's my loyalty?
I thought you stuck with people. You stuck with me.
I did stick with you, Mark, but it's gone too far, I'm afraid, after Partygate. Partygate's not going away. We've lost our faith. I think he's becoming an international laughingstock. And this is another thing.
He's not the one that went out on a grope fest, though, is he?
But he's not getting rid of this guy, and I'll tell you why, because he doesn't want to lose another by-election, and it's so... I'm afraid everyone I talk to these days just doesn't trust him. We can't have a Prime Minister that's a liar. He has to do the right thing and go. I'm sorry, for the sake of the party. That's my thoughts.
We're hearing on the newswires that Mr Pincher may have been suspended as an actual member of the Conservative Party, not just losing the whip. So, I mean, it could be that we are weeks away from a by-election. I'm not sure of Pincher's majority, Peter, but, I mean, this is death by 1,000 cuts for Boris Johnson, isn't it?
Yes, I think there is some truth in that. He's been dragged kicking and screaming. You know, you've got an MP admits being blind drunk. You've got some grotesque allegations which are either no comment or denied, but then you've got the PM's failure to do enough about it. And again, there's a pattern behind the curve. You know, cast your mind back a year or so ago, Owen Paterson, now the former MP for Shropshire, said there was nothing to see here. Eventually, media and public pressure overwhelmed him. He resigned. We've seen it where the government clings on to discredited figures again and again. Took 24 hours to suspend Chris Pincher. Why did it take that long? No idea. I suspect there's going to be more, to borrow a word from last year, Pestminster-type stories over the Sunday papers. This is not going away. Boris Johnson hasn't created these issues. He has failed to deal with them.
What do we think about this? I mean, is it right, Neil Fox, that a sitting Prime Minister could be unseated because of the actions of one of his MPs?
Well, it could happen, and I think, exactly as Peter said, the problem is it's not that he's done any of these things, it's just how he, in charge, has dealt with them, and he hasn't dealt with them very well. And I think, sadly, what seems to be this common picture that most people that I know are talking about is, if there seems to be a problem, whether it's a policy problem or a sort of a problem like a more personal problem like this, it's instead of dealing with it, it's let's just kick it down the road a bit more and maybe something else will come along that will take over.
Well, that's what he does all the time.
Well, it happens all the time, isn't it? You know, obviously obviously we have Brexit and then COVID comes in, but after that, you know, in a way, people have said, oh, the war that's come, you know, suddenly that's taken a whole load of issues away from looking at COVID, and now is something else going to come along next week?
Right? Boris has smashed the war, hasn't he, in Ukraine? You know, the EU have not been able to form a position, proper sanctions against Vladimir Putin. He's a heroic Churchillian figure in Ukraine. And, of course, you know, we're through the pandemic. We had the vaccine rollout was a triumph. Boris Johnson called it right on Freedom Day, on July the 19th of last year. He's got some things right. I mean, don't we underestimate this man at his peril, Neil?
Well, I think when I've been on a show before, people have... We were debating exactly this thing, that we can't always look at the negative. I mean, it's very easy to always look at the negatives. There have been some positives, but right now, there are a lot of negatives. And these negatives are loud, and they're exactly as Lizzie said, people just sadly don't seem to trust him anymore. And once you've lost the trust, once you've lost that, can we get down the pub and have a drink with this man? Would we like to? Which was always the big thing people said about Boris. And I think people would now, they wouldn't want to have a drink with him, they'd want to argue with him.
And I think there's a picture in people's minds that will never leave, and that is our Queen sitting on her own at the funeral while, you know, then they were out partying. And I'm afraid, that image will not leave some of the voters, and I'm afraid he has to do the right thing and step down.
It's funny, you would like to see, Peter, a Labour government. Who would best facilitate a Labour government? Would it be Boris Johnson, unpopular enough to lose the next election, or would it be his replacement?
Well, we're in a strange position where the fate of the country is in the hands of maybe a few dozen Tory backbenchers, and that's without getting into all the minutiae, essentially because Boris Johnson won a confidence vote narrowly, but a relatively small number, a few dozen, only need to change their mind on the next vote. Boris Johnson will be out, then you've got a new Prime Minister who could be much better or much worse for Labour. If you're the opposition, you know, I worked for a Labour MP, you always have to say yes when you're asked if you want a general election, even if you don't really mean it, because you're a bit short of money, or you haven't picked all your key candidates, or you haven't quite got your policy platform ready yet. Labour should be gagging for an election, public and privately, but really, it comes back to this point, the fate of Boris Johnson is in the hands of a few dozen Tory MPs.
Well, it is. But, you've been in those, those sort of, those smoke-filled rooms within the Labour movement about how, plotting to achieve power, of course, threefold under Tony Blair. Are you keeping Boris? Is he like Labour's best asset, or do you fear this election-winning machine a little bit?
Well, I personally have a record of losing several elections personally and publicly.
You'll be back.
But I think for Labour, ultimately you want Britain to succeed, and you should be full-throated in saying you want Britain to succeed, like with the vaccine rollout. I do give the government some credit. But on pure political interest, for the Johnson government to collapse would be a success for the Labour Party, because it would be public recognition of sleep.
But I'm just trying to work out who Labour would like to have as the leader of the Tory party. Would you like to keep Boris?
No, I think Labour should do everything it can to force Boris Johnson from office, because he is a deceitful person.
But then you might get someone better, and then you lose the election.
Who would you have to replace Boris?
The person Labour would like.
Tom Tugendhat.
The person Labour would like, I think, is Liz Truss, because she's not representative. She's over here ideologically. She's a right-wing libertarian.
Well, I wanted Rishi, but that ship has passed.
Well, and can I ask one question?
He's far too loaded.
At the moment, Labour aren't exactly full of positivity and offering hope and great policy to the rest. All they've had to do, to be fair, is just highlight a government's problems and maybe a Prime Minister's problems. Is Keir the right man to lead the Labour Party?
Yeah, I think he is. And
do you really think so?
Think what he's done. On day one, apologised to the Jewish community. He got his reforms through party conference. He gave a very personal speech at Labour conference in Brighton. I was there, didn't get enough coverage, introducing himself to the public, talking about how he grew up perhaps in more straitened circumstances, how the NHS supported his mother. And we're now back to having a shadow cabinet of all the talents, rather than essentially a sect of the Corbynite left.
No, I'm sorry, Keir Starmer lacks in personality, charisma, and went on and on about Partygate, and then we're still waiting whether he gets fined or not, and then he'll go. I'm sorry, the only way Labour would get in was if Andy Burnham would come in, I think.
Just a couple of seconds on this. Can I ask you very briefly, Daily Express, PM's bold plan, buy dream home and pass on mortgage?
Well, I'd love to comment on this very briefly, and I think your viewers will know that journalists could put spin on things as much as
what, the Daily Express
secretaries.
This is the record of truth, isn't it?
Daily Express in love with Boris because of Brexit. This could easily be rewritten as half a century debt millstone for impoverished households priced out of the housing market. If it takes you half a century to repay your whatever it is, £1 million mortgage on a 3-bed semi, that is not a fair or functioning Britain.
OK, and there you go. Well, look, Peter gets the last word. More to come. The creator of a new initiative designed to prevent the loneliness of the elderly says she was surprised at how many younger people wanted to get involved in the project. An amazing lady, Kathleen Hammond, created Adopt a Grandparent, which has received over 7,000 applicants in 2 weeks. The scheme that was first aimed at helping the elderly in Northern Ireland has now spanned across the world. It's incredible. It aims to recruit pen pals for the elderly in an attempt to improve mental health and grow intergenerational friendships. This is what she had to say a short while ago. Check this out.
So I've been a carer for over 9 years, and loneliness has always been a big issue with the older generation. Obviously, within the last few years with COVID-19, that has escalated, and it's no shock. We've all felt loneliness now as well, so we can all relate to what an older person feels. Older people don't resonate well with technology. They're used to our local newspaper, they're used to a letter coming in, and they don't seem to get that anymore because obviously letter writing isn't the way forward now. So to receive a letter now, even you'll know yourself if you receive a handwritten letter, how special that is, and it does brighten your day. So it is very important that we do this for them and let them know that as a community, not just in Northern Ireland anymore, but all of the UK, that we're here for them and that we're willing to do something just to brighten up their day. So we have a slogan, and it's combating loneliness one letter at a time, and that's what I really hope to achieve, and that is what the end goal is just combating loneliness one letter at a time.
Well, Kathleen Hammond is my new hero. Thank you to Melissa for putting that package together. Adopt a Grandparent, what a great idea. The website is adoptagrandparent.org.uk. Neil, a great idea. Yeah. I do think that grandparents are greatly undervalued in this country. That they're an amazing resource.
Oh my God, they are. And I mean, in a way, this is a wonderful initiative, but also rather sad that a grandparent, literally, it's strangers having to write to their grandparent because they might literally have no other conversations that week. Where's their family? Where's their kids? Where are their grandchildren? Why are they not in touch? But it's a wonderful idea. I mean, other cultures, I don't know what it is about our culture, we don't look after our elderly very well. Other cultures around the world have them as part of their family. So when you have young children, mum and dad may still be off working, doing things. The grandparents come in and help look after the kids and are part of that family unit. We don't do that over here so much.
Yeah, you have it in Asia, you have it in Mediterranean Europe, and in Britain, too many of our older people are neglected, unloved and lonely, Lizzie.
Yeah, they're forgotten, and especially through the pandemic. There's so many that have been so lonely.
We thought a lot about young people, rightly, but what about our older citizens?
Yeah, who never saw anyone for weeks and weeks, so isolated, and to be lonely is the worst feeling in the world. This is such a great scheme. Well done to her, because this is amazing. But as you said, Mark, we undervalue grandparents, and it's sad that we're not like other countries like Italy and so forth that really embrace the whole family.
And, I've got lots of wonderful older people that watch this programme that we've got watching us tonight, Peter, and older people have got so much to offer.
Experience, wisdom, perspective, and maybe they've taken some of the slings and arrows that us younger folk haven't. There's still a generation that saw the end of the war and rationing, and in an era perhaps when there's lots of problems in society, but there's also lesser things that we get unnecessarily upset over, stuff on Twitter. And I think, for a wartime household that grew up with rationing, we can learn a bit from them.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Very well put. Well, look, that is a brilliant organisation. Adopt a Grandparent. Do check it out. Lots more to come, folks. Another great British game show. We'll be looking at whether own brand goods in the supermarket are better than the official posh ones. We'll debate that. There is a cost of living crisis, and Tesco are at war with Heinz, and I back Tesco all the way. Find out why after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30am every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to the final part of Mark Dolan tonight. Really excited about tomorrow night's show. We're debating whether businesses should stay out of politics, and we'll be joined by the former chairman of Pizza Express, a remarkable guy, Luke Johnson, and also the founder of Pimlico Plumbers, Charlie Mullins. And on Sunday, the Crankies are in the studio. They are my panellists alongside David Oldroyd Bolt, the historian. We don't do boring, not on my watch. The Crankies, live on Sunday. Can't wait. Now, recently, Tesco stood up for the British consumer during the cost of living crisis by refusing a 30p increase to Heinz for their products. The supermarket is refusing to stock the American giant's products. And I completely support Tesco. Well done. They're backing British consumers, and they will not take this price hike from a multi-billion-dollar company. But it begs the question, are own-brand goods as good as the posh branded ones? You know, the kind of supermarket value version, the Tesco value versus Heinz or any of the other big brands. What do you think, Lizzie? I mean, it's been a long time since you were in a normal supermarket, of course.
Well, no, I love my... I actually
You go to, like, the Harrods food hall, don't you?
No, I don't. I don't do a Fortune and Masons like Prince Charles with the carry bags. No, I don't. I love... I support my local shops in my village, actually, quite a lot, so to keep the stores...
I'm very glad.
I do love my food, though.
We're going to do a taste test, OK? Now, producer Tom, the big bowl. What's in the big bowl? OK. Lizzie, would you mind passing me the small bowl?
Yes,
OK, so what I've got, folks, and you can see it on TV, the small bowl is Frazzles, which is the official crisps. Wait a minute. I've just destroyed the idea of the game. But they can taste them anyway. Yeah. This is Frazzles, and then this is the Tesco own brand bacon rashers. Which are better? Here are the bacon rashers.
Thank you very much. OK, I'll pass them along.
Oh, that you're a gentleman. That's all right. First of all, take me through the bacon rasher. Is that delivering for you? That's the own brand Tesco cheapo.
It's really good, but when you have this kind of stuff, you really should have given us a pint of beer, because you have to have a drink or something with savour.
Well, I noticed Edwards had a crafty half a minute ago, but...
It's the only thing I have in common with Nigel Farage, the only thing.
Well, exactly. Now, so are you happy with the Tesco ones?
It was fine. It was very bacony and crunchy.
Lizzie?
Cardboardy.
You're going to call me a soft Labour person, but I don't eat meat and they're bacon Frazzles.
Oh, we won't force that on you. No. In that case, Lizzie, can you now try the official Frazzles, which is the posh branded one?
I'm not sure it's actually bacon.
There's not going to be too much meat in it, but...
Okay, we won't risk it. We don't want to do that.
I'm happy to be the host.
Right, this is the right one, yeah?
Yeah, go on. Okay. Eat much away.
MasterChef, eat your heart out, folks.
Oh, no, that is better crunch.
Honestly.
Melts in the tongue.
Oh, really? You're all the way for the Frazzles?
Do you know, they were equally good. They were both crunchy and bacony.
No, come on, don't sit on the fence. Come on.
Well, I'll do the casting vote then. And I never eat carbohydrates. Wait, so small... No. What's this one here? The little bowl. Tom, what is it again?
That's the real one.
These are official Frazzles. Delicious. Melts in the mouth, but I need a pint of Stella with it.
Yeah.
And then here's the Tesco bacon... What's it? Tesco wins. A bit saltier, a little bit crispier. Great British company. I love Tesco. Thank you so much to my amazing panel, Lizzie Cundy, Peter Edwards and Neil Fox. They will all come back very, very soon. Thank you for your company. I couldn't do it without you. And I'm delighted to say we'll do it all again tomorrow, 9 till 11. And, of course, Sunday, 9 till 11 as well. We don't do boring, so do come back tomorrow at 9. I can't wait. And stick around, because I'm hosting Headliners. See you shortly.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. The weekends will continue the trend of showers, but with some sunshine in between. Next week, though, does look drier, warmer and a little sunnier for most of us. High pressure has been trying to build in from the south, but this low pressure, these weather fronts are now taking control, bringing some quite heavy bursts of rain across Northern Ireland through this evening, and they won't stop there, spreading into parts of Scotland, northwest England, some bright colours there, some quite heavy rain for a time, the rain spreading into Wales and eventually southwest England by dawn. Much of the Midlands and eastern England staying dry. The torrential showers of Friday afternoon clearing out into the North Sea. Temperatures dropping no lower than about 11 to 13 degrees, so quite a mild night and not a particularly chilly start to Saturday, but it will be a wet start for some. This line of rain extending from Yorkshire across the Midlands, southeast Wales to southwest England will slowly creep eastwards, but not really reach East Anglia and the southeast till late on. Further north and west from that, it's a day of some sunny spells, but also there will be more showers. When the sun's out, 18, 19, maybe 20 degrees. A little warmer in the southeast, 23, but quite cool in the northwest, 15 or 16 at best here. We will see some of those showers getting into the southeast during the evening time, so bear that in mind if you're heading out. Elsewhere, the showers do tend to fade, and so for many, it becomes clear and cool as we head into Sunday morning. Sunday is then another day of sunshine and showers. We start off at 11 to 13 degrees Celsius. There will be sunny spells on Sunday morning, particularly across central and eastern parts of England, but we are looking at a fair few showers coming in from the north and the west, and we'll see some heavy ones, I suspect, by Sunday afternoon, particularly over parts of eastern England and northeast Scotland. In the south, though, and particularly the southwest, not too many showers. A largely dry day here, and that's a sign of things to come. A few showers in the north, but many places becoming dry next week, and certainly in the south, turning warmer.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't